So, hi, Kristin, and welcome to the show today.
Hi, it's good to be here.
I'm really excited to speak with you because you have just so much incredible knowledge that you've gained over decades of running your own business. But your book, Roadmap to Revenue, is all about how we can better manage our sales processes and get better results. So I'm really excited to dig in and get all your best advice around that. But before we do, I'd love it if you could share with the audience a little bit about your early days as an entrepreneur.
I actually started out selling machine shop tools. I think I was the first woman in the country to do that. And I did it for a Pratt & Whitney distributor, and they just gave me a catalog. And, this was back in the days of mini skirts. And so I didn't have any trouble actually getting into the machine shops. I failed miserably because they didn't train me at all. And I didn't know what I was talking about. And the moment, literally the moment that changed my life, or that set me on a path, was when I went to a small machine shop down in San Diego. And the old foreman came out, and all the guys from the shop sat down, they came out also. They were curious to see what I was doing. I was only 17. And the old machine shop guy said, "Okay, so how is your drill bit better than the one that I'm using now?" And I, first of all, didn't even know to ask him, which one are you using now? I was absolutely floored. I didn't have an answer for him. I was humiliated. And, when you're a senior in high school, that doesn't work. I mean, you think you're at the top of the world. And I walked out of the building with my tail between my legs. And I remember standing next to my old car and thinking to myself, I'm going to learn everything I can about tech and selling. And I've been doing that ever since. So that old guy really did me a favor by putting me on the spot and teaching me at the very beginning that you have to understand what you're selling before you should go out and talk about it. It just makes sense. If you know less than the customer, which is often the case these days, people research so much online, you're not going to be able to sell anything. So it's an educational process. Selling is not really selling. It's having a conversation with somebody about what they're trying to do and seeing if you can help.
Exactly. So you did your research into sales and tech. At what point did you think, well, I'm going to turn that into my own business?
Well, I actually had a lot of sales and marketing jobs. So after that initial experience, I worked my way through college, partly singing because I have a degree in music, which did me no good at all. And when I got out, I thought I was going to be a teacher, but there weren't any teaching jobs. So I just decided, okay, I'm just going to sell because I knew how to do that already. And I started selling for various companies and moved up to the Bay Area around Silicon Valley. And after doing sort of an apprenticeship with a guy who owned an ad agency, I decided that I would start an ad agency, and my husband and I went into business together. He was the graphics part and I was the words and clients part. And we did that for 12 years, extremely successful. We billed about the same amount as agencies with 8 or 10 people, and we only had 2 people. So we really did a good job. And partly we did a good job because my husband and, I was a salesperson, marketing person, and I really wasn't into processes. And that's why we were able to grow the company so well. So I'm kind of a process fanatic. And when the Macintosh came out, I looked at my husband and said, they're all going to take their work in-house. And I'm not going to fight that. I'm going to figure out how to help them. I'm going to help people do a better job of marketing in-house. And so he retired. He was 52 at the time. And I started becoming a revenue coach. I invented an industry for myself because I knew that CEOs and entrepreneurs didn't care about sales or marketing. They cared about revenue. And so I became a revenue coach. I taught CEOs and entrepreneurs how to make more money by understanding what their customers wanted to buy from them and how they wanted to buy it. And I did that for decades, mostly in high-tech companies, and then started my own agency in 2017 because I could see that many established businesses were like deer in the headlights when it came to digital marketing. They just didn't know what to do. They weren't managing it properly. They were failing. And it was really getting bad because all marketing's online now. pretty much. So I now have a company and I love doing it and it's a lot of fun. I should mention that as part of my job as a revenue coach, I would go in and turn around sales and marketing departments for companies of all sizes, including big ones like IBM and Dow Jones and so on. So I've worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs. I've interviewed thousands of customers, and I've found the basic premise that it's not how you sell or what you sell, it's how they buy and how you can help them buy that makes all the difference. It's just common sense. But as you say, common sense, not necessarily common practice. I'm going to quote you on that. It's very hard when you have to sell to think like a buyer. When you're buying something yourself, you know perfectly well that people don't do a good job of helping you buy. If you're buying a physical object, for example, they might not even give you the measurements of that object, even on Amazon. It's crazy. So you don't get it right when you're selling. But if you put yourself in the customer's head and say, what do they want to know? How do they want to know it? How can I help them? Then you start getting on the right path.
Yeah, and I think that makes so much sense, that we should adapt ourselves to the buying process rather than expecting them to somehow figure out our processes and understand that, when every company has a different process. And we see that a lot, particularly around communications, that people are expected to understand what different departments do within a company and what questions to ask, when in fact we should be taking the time and effort to understand what they need and how best to present that. But how do you even begin to understand someone's buying process?
Well, I actually spell this out very carefully in my book. My book just reveals all the secrets, everything I've learned. First of all, you interview customers who have already bought from you. And the good news is it could be as few as 5. By the 5th conversation, you have bankable information, believe it or not. I typically try to talk to 5 to 7 people of a given type. Again, by the 5th conversation, if you do this properly, you really will know how they buy, what they had in mind when they were buying, and how you can help them. Now, I need to back up a little bit and talk for a minute about the customer's mindset. I've been very frustrated with people getting stuck on personas. The problem with personas is an 80-year-old person could have the same mindset as an 18-year-old person, and knowing the demographics of your audience and all that, it just doesn't matter. What matters is the mindset of the customer when they set out to buy. And the mindset I've defined as 3 things: their desires, what they want; their concerns, because they've been down the road before, they've been disappointed, they don't know if it's going to work out okay; and then their questions, things that they need to know in order to buy. So that's what your investigative work with these phone calls. And phone calls are the best, by the way. Don't do surveys. People won't write down things that they will tell you on the phone. Don't do it in person, because the whole body language thing gets in the way. They will be much more open with you in a phone conversation. You interview them. I have the questions you should ask in my book. They're open-ended questions. How do you feel about our product or service? What was your experience with us? If you were the CEO of our company tomorrow, what's the first thing you would focus on or fix? What trends do you see in your market? How do you buy this type of thing? These are open-ended questions. So you get those answers and have them transcribed. And by the way, you do record the conversations. You do tell them you're recording, and you just say, I can't type as fast as you can talk, and I want to catch every word. And then you also tell them that the information will go into a report, if you're going to share it with anybody, that is categorized by subject. So it's anonymous. Now, if you can have somebody else make these calls for you, that's even better. But I've had CEOs and entrepreneurs make their own calls and be just fine. The trick is you have to stick to interviewing. You can't sell in that call. The minute you sell, they become a poker player and they won't tell you anything, because nobody tells salespeople what they're really thinking while they're being sold to. So these are things that I've worked out over the years. Again, chapter 3 of the book spells it out exactly and why and how. If you don't have any customers yet, then you go to people who might buy and you'd use the same method. It's just a little harder. You definitely do not go to your friends. You don't talk to people who already know you, because they trust you already. And that's a big factor in that mindset of those concerns and the desires and everything. People are very skeptical of people who sell and, just the whole marketing thing. In fact, they don't even read marketing copy anymore unless it's very specific. So that's how you get started. And this takes bravery. This takes courage. This takes humility because, you've got this idea for something and you're scared to death that they're going to say, oh, that's a stupid idea. I would never buy that. Or good golly, that price is way too high. I'd only pay this much for it. And you know that if you charge that small of amount, you're not going to make any money. So people are afraid of what they'll find out, but it's a heck of a lot better to find it out before you go out and invest your life savings in something that isn't going to work. And you'll figure out how you could solve their problem.
Yeah. Often they give you some really great ideas. I did a similar process recently. There was a big change that I wanted to make with my current program, but I wasn't sure it was going to take a lot of time and effort. And I was like, is it really worth it? I felt it would have helped people more, but I wasn't sure. So I went to the market and asked them, and they always came out with some great, do you know what I saw so-and-so did, or I did this program once and I really loved this. And so I did make the change, but I was able to do so in a much better way than I came up with on my own. So it was really enlightening and I really enjoyed the experience and made some great friends in the process as well.
Glad you brought that up because the thing that this gives you is the confidence, the absolute confidence that you don't have when you're just depending on your own ideas and your friends are talking to you and they're saying, oh, that's a stupid idea, don't do that, or everybody likes this or whatever. When you talk to real customers who would be willing to pay real money for what you're selling, and you get the absolute truth from them, and you also see with those 5 to 7 conversations the things they have in common. People will use the exact same phrase to describe something, even though they've never talked to each other and never will. They just have this mindset in common. So that gives you confidence that you would never get any other way. And this is also true if you work inside of a company and the marketing people are not looked at with respect. It changes that 100% because now you can stand toe to toe with somebody who's saying, oh, no, that's a stupid idea. And you can say, wait a minute, I interviewed this many customers and they all said this. And the CEO will say, yeah, listen to her. She's right. So it changes people's lives when you're willing to step out and do this research and learn these things. I'm so glad you said that because it really is what happens. It changes your life.
Yeah. And you mentioned about having these customer interviews. And for anyone out there who's listening, thinking, I couldn't do that. I couldn't go and ask them to invest more time in answering my questions. How can they shift that mindset? Do people ever say, no, I'm not going to give you the time?
I've done literally thousands of interviews. And yes, it's harder to get in touch with people these days. And you have to bug them a little bit to get them on the phone and stuff. But especially if someone has bought from you already, they want you to be successful. They have already invested in you, number one. Number two, they're actually flattered that you would ask them. And again, this is tricky stuff. You have to do it just right. I actually show you the email that you should send and how you approach them and the things you say, the things that have worked. Selling is very much a minefield kind of situation. And you have to be able to navigate through there and get to the other end without offending someone or turning them off or making them say, oh, geez, they don't understand me at all or whatever. So as a buyer, if someone approached me, not with a survey, because you just feel like, they're not going to really get anything out of it, and surveys, unfortunately, there's nothing new in a survey. It's your ideas of your questions put into a survey. So they actually want to help you is the answer. And they're also very pleased. And I've had so many people say, this was really a good interview. I'm so glad you did this. It's good that the CEO hired you because I've been thinking this for a long time and I wish somebody would do it or whatever. So they're actually more willing to help you than you think.
Yeah. And the number of times that I've wanted to buy something from someone, but they didn't follow up with me, and then I lost their name, so I couldn't, or there was a little bit of information I wasn't clear about and I didn't know who to contact. We do want to help. We do want to get the support. And as I haven't done thousands of interviews like you, but every time I have done these, as you say, they always say thank you. You know, if they've worked with you and really enjoyed that experience, then they want for more people to enjoy that experience and to share their feedback and help you. People are really nice.
Yes, they are. If they were as bad as they show people in the movies, we wouldn't even be able to drive down the freeway. I mean, so people are nice and they do want to be helpful. And just think of it this way: how many people leave reviews? They don't have to leave reviews. What do they get out of leaving a review? Nothing. But they're able to help other people with that and share their experience. And that's what makes a difference.
Yeah. You've mentioned a little bit about your journey, and you've gone from just walking into shops to telephone to moving into digital and advertising along the way as well. Have you noticed any big differences in the way we need to sell over that time?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Google, first the web, 1994 came out. I was writing a newsletter. I actually just went into a cave for 4 months and tried to figure it all out and came out with 4 issues about the internet. It changed everything because it gave customers access. And when Google became better and better a search engine, and you really could find what you were looking for with a very specific search term. I just wrote about that, an article about that in my blog. It's changed everything. People think they can find specifically what they want because of Google, and that's really made a difference. It's changed everything. So you have to know what their mindset is. When they first come to your website, you better be right on target, very specifically, and no marketing blah, blah stuff. Nobody's reading that anymore. So you have to say, this is what we sell. Here's exactly what you can do with it. You know, it's just a very specific thing that they're looking for. And that's why you need to understand their mindset. Because if you don't have that, they're just going to click away. The alternative is always just one click away, and they know it. So it's changed everything.
So do you feel that having a website is still one of the most important things for a business to have?
Yeah, you still have to have it. Now it's like not having an address or a phone number or something. You have to have a website, even if it's a simple one, and it has to address their desires, their questions, and their concerns, or it won't do you any good.
Yeah. And I think simple works well online. I remember my very first website, it literally just had, this is what I do, a couple of bullet points on my phone number. But everyone loved it. And he's like, do you know, we don't have to think. We come to your website, we know what you do, and we know how to get in contact with you. And I got loads of work from that. You know, it doesn't need to be overwhelming and complicated. It just needs to say, as you say, this is what I do, this is how you can benefit, and this is how you can get it.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the other thing that's getting more and more prominent is you need to be involved in some kind of directory. Third-party directories are really becoming a place where people go, especially for services. So if you're a service business, you have to figure out the directories that where you should be listed, and you have to work it. It's not set it and forget it. You really have to work it. You have to interact with people. You have to put fresh content in there to make sure all of your listings are up to date. Google My Business is one of the most prominent ones, and you have to jump through a lot of hoops to answer all the questions and do what you're supposed to do. It's very sort of bureaucratic and boring, but it's really important.
Yeah, interesting. I created my first website in 97, and that was the first thing, was getting it listed on all the directories. But I have to admit, it's something that I haven't necessarily thought about since. Today, we tend to think marketing and think social media. Do you think social media is a really important part of every marketing strategy? I know lots of people really don't like it.
Yeah, it's not necessarily where a sale will come from, but it's a reinforcement. So what happens, especially on a B2B, business to business service, for example, people will go there just to see if you're posting, if anybody's awake, what types of things you're talking about, whether they're helpful or not. It's sort of a character check. It's like finding out the neighborhood somebody lives in before you date them. I mean, it's just a way of sort of referencing and finding out who these people are and what they care about, and if they even are on social. So it's actually become a requirement from that perspective. They won't necessarily follow you, but they certainly will look, see where you're at and what you care about. And if you care about what they care about and you're very helpful, that's going to make them say, okay, this is another checkbox for them. I will check them further.
Yeah, I'm often surprised when I'm out networking how someone will come up and talk to me about the way that they've been enjoying my posts, but they haven't liked it or commented. They've been kind of secretly looking, but it's all, as you say, building that character. And then they've got really excited. It's like, wow, you're just the same in real life. It's like, well, yes, of course, because it's me. But actually that's not necessarily common. People do tend to think, okay, social media, I have to be this person. Now online, I have to be professional and I have to be like this. And for email, I have to be something else. Do you have any advice regarding finding perhaps your brand and your voice so that you can be consistent throughout any touch point that the customer might have?
Yeah, the thing that I'm quoted on the most often is about branding, which is this phrase, which is branding is the promise that you make. Your brand is the promise that you keep. So you have to figure out the promise that they want you to keep. And it's usually one very specific type of thing that you hadn't even thought of. And I've done this so many times. I've turned whole companies around by understanding what their customers really wanted from them, or were even getting from them, but they didn't even realize it was important to them. And so you change the whole company focus to that promise, the promise that they have been keeping or could keep. And then the whole company is focused on keeping that promise at all different levels. That's what branding and brand really are. And thought leadership is the same thing. So, you look at what I've done with my career. I've done podcasts. Back in the day, I did newsletters. I wrote articles for marketing magazines. I've written books. It's all about understanding what the customer wants to buy and how they want to buy it. And you would think that this would get dated. I actually wrote the book in 2011 and it's still absolutely relevant today. I did an Audible version, so I got to hear my whole book over again and realize that I set out to make it timeless, and it is, even with all the changes in technology, which I was very familiar with because I was in the tech industry for so long. The basic idea that somebody has a need and they go out and try to find a solution, and your job is to make it easy for them to find you and understand what you're selling and buy from you. That doesn't change. I don't care what technology there is. I don't care if it's going to be someday where we think it and it automatically places an order, because of some chip in our brain. It doesn't matter. That's the basic premise. And then you have to keep your promises. If you say we could deliver this, then you have to do it, and you have to build your business so that everything is focused on that. And that's really thought leadership. That's branding, making sure people know what they can get from you and how they can benefit, like you said on your website. That's it. It's really simple stuff. We complicate it by worrying and not talking to customers and fretting and, think, how can I sell more? Because you need the money. I mean, it just gets in the way.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? That the tools have changed significantly over the last few decades, but people haven't.
No.
Even from hundreds of years ago, what people needed is still what they need today. And some of the quotes that we still share from the Greek philosophers are still true today.
Exactly.
We like to think we're very evolved these days, but perhaps not.
Not really. Yeah.
So with understanding the brand promise, and I love that you brought that up, because my old school education about marketing is purely about putting the customer's need at the heart of every decision you make. It's making sure that every touch point, sales included, really flows and all has that central focus, as you were saying. But with all these tools, do you feel that marketing is now more important than sales? If you get the right messaging, the right tools in place, that we don't necessarily need that sales conversation?
It depends. In my book, one of the things I talk about is the amount of scrutiny that the customer applies to the purchase. And in fact, there are 4 types of products and services in the world based on that amount of scrutiny. So there's light, medium, heavy, and intense scrutiny products and services. Light scrutiny, see it, buy it, don't have many questions. It's the candy bar at the checkout counter. Can I afford it? Can my waistline afford it? Okay, I'm done. The medium ones are things like clothing or simple software programs where you have a few questions, maybe 5, 10, 15 questions max, and there's really nobody else involved very much usually, unless, you want to make sure that your boyfriend's going to like this or whatever, but it's basically still you. And then heavy is anything involving a contract, like a house or a car or an expensive software program or something like that. In those cases, there's a contract, there's a salesperson, there's a deep commitment, there's more money to spend, and there's definitely more people involved. So you have more than one buyer that you have to address. And then intense is all of that, but you get married. It's a long-term commitment. Every time I mention those 4 categories, everybody knows where they fit automatically. They just know, okay, well, that means I'm a medium or a heavy or whatever. In my book, I have a chapter dedicated to each one of those and all the types of questions that people ask and how you can answer those questions. And so you understand the buying process for the amount of scrutiny that they apply to the purchase. So that's really the way you get out into the market, and you just kind of ignore the fact that there's marketing and sales. If you're an intense or heavy scrutiny product or service, you definitely need a salesperson. However, these days, the customer will get 80% or 90 or even 95% of their questions answered digitally before they talk to a salesperson. And if the salesperson starts at the beginning and wants to talk about the company history and all the stuff that the person already figured out online, they're going to lose the sale. They have to immediately get into the mindset of the customer. What are you trying to accomplish? What have you done so far? How can I help? And answer those very specific questions. And the big problem is salespeople are taught to answer the big, broad, general questions and not the very specific questions. So that's a problem right now in the marketplace. So the people who do best are more nerdy types who just understand the product really well and can talk about it and give the customer very specific information. I know I keep using that word specific, but that's the thing that everybody's missing.
Yes, particularly when you're maybe in the earlier stages, being specific feels very scary because you potentially could be limiting your market, but in fact, it has the opposite effect.
And you can be specific and really drill down. Like, for example, if you think about that example I was talking about earlier, where you're on Amazon or whatever, and it's a physical box that you're buying and you want to know if it's going to fit in the space that you have for it. Basic question must be answered. It's one thing to give them the measurements, but then you can also have a little video that shows the various places they could put it and how it could be arranged. And you drill down into the specifics. So when they come to your site or your listing or whatever, they're really getting more information than they could from anyone else, which is already going to make them want to buy from you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that holiday, isn't it? That you're actually selling a plane ticket, but nobody wants to sit on a plane for 4 hours next to someone that's eating some smelly food. But everyone wants that destination. So
Right.
it's understanding what is it that people really want. So
Right.
that's what you're selling as a destination, when in fact what you're really selling is that plane ticket.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I like that.
So, I love your book. As you say, it's so, I'm going to use your word, specific. It really has exactly what to do. And it's written in such a way that it's very readable. I was reading it and then got so caught up. And my husband was like, haven't you got a meeting? I was like, oh my gosh. So I really love that you've made this information so accessible, which is really generous. But while I've got you here, is there any one thing that every entrepreneur needs to understand about how to be successful?
Yeah, it basically goes to this. The customer is the only one with the money. Yes, you can get loans and financing and all that, but to have a business be successful, you need customers. They're the ones who fuel the business and keep you going. And they also tell other people about you. So the more customers you have, the more customers you're going to get. So you really should build your business around what they want. And in order to do that, you have to find out from them what they want. That's it. That's the formula. There is no other magic bean. That's the magic bean.
Kristin, you have shared so much value. It's been just a wonderful conversation, and it's really clarified a lot for me, and I'm sure the audience have really shifted their thinking. Is there anything else that you would like the audience to know about building a successful business, or is there anything else that you would like to add?
Yeah, I think two things. Be brave. Don't be scared. Just hang in there. And the second is persistence. Don't give up. I've worked with hundreds of business owners, and what I see is the people who succeed are the ones who just don't give up, and they focus on what the customer wants. And they do succeed. They really do. It's a recipe. That's why I call it a roadmap. It is, in fact, something that anyone can do. So don't get discouraged. Don't be afraid. It's a complete waste of time. Don't worry. Won't get you anywhere. Just be brave and persistent and keep learning, and you will make it.
Fantastic. A great note to end on. Thank you so much, Kristin. So if anyone didn't catch it, it's Roadmap to Revenue. It might come out backwards on the video. How
no, it's frontwards.
Customers want to buy, which I think is just really fantastic. And it's well worth getting that and adding those tools to your toolkit as you build your business. But Kristin, how can people find you if they want to learn more about your business?
First of all, the book's on Amazon. And while there is an Audible version, it's because it's so prescriptive, because I have bullet lists and explanations and all that. You're better off getting the hard copy. I hate to say it in this digital age, but it is better read that way. It is on Amazon. Our website is zhivagopartners.com. And if you just type Kristin Zhivago into Google, I pretty much dominate the first 2 or 3 pages or whatever. So you'll find me that way.
Fantastic. And I'll put all your links in the show notes below as well.
Great.
Kristin, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Good interview.